Man, I had it on mute the whole time. I'm just talking. Lafayette, Manla, Bibi for Houdier, it's your favorite warrior, Blak Panther, back in the building. I appreciate y'all for pulling up. Hope that it's fair weather. Where y'all at? It's beautiful here in North Carolina after some days of rain, but we back on it now. I appreciate y'all for telling me that I was on mute. It's hard running the show by yourself. It's hard. But yeah, today we're going to go part 3 inside of the National Gambian Museum. For those, this is your first broadcast in the series. I traveled to Banjul, Gambia, went to the National Gambian Museum. This trip was impromptu. I was supposed to go to the Kunta Kinte's village. So I was supposed to go there, right? But it was raining. It was raining really bad that day. So you have to take a ferry to go to Kunta Kinte's village. And when it's raining, they shut down the ferry. So I was with my nephew, Manama. We call him Wonder Man. So he was like, man, I don't know when this rain gonna stop. You want to just hit the National Gambian Gambian Museum. I said, yeah, let's go. And what I saw in there prompted me to do this series. So that's how this series came about. We are on part 3. But before we get all the way into the broadcast, I got to hit you with.
I'm a freedom fighter, Dalai Lama from a weed supplier. I'm Muhammad to the rap game, that's my last name. My first should be Elijah, and I need a choir. Freak a flyer, gold medallion, Jesus peace. I'm the one, the real Jesus Maya, cause I'm trying to get niggas to lead the street. And I don't need to be, cause I can easily speak to these niggas through the frequencies to compete with me. You gon' need a priest to preach your sweetest needs, to give a hell of an Easter speech. I keep the heat right there underneath the seat. Got pulled over by the police this week. They asked me why I got this fully loaded piece with me. I say, officer, I'm just trying to make it home peacefully. So I'm riding with a rifle, another iron in the Bible. Call my niggas out in Paris, have them climb up the Eiffel. We don't give a fuck, cause it's all about survival. When you caught up in the cycle, when you feel like you entitled to more than what you get in it, to turn you homicidal. Y'all know that I'm the best, but I swear y'all in denial. And they don't wanna say it, cause I'm better than they idol. Got the mind of a disciple when I'm rocking the revival. But I'm soon to be the king, fuck you and your team, by the boom, by the beam. If you don't like the way I rule my regime, let them up before June in the spring. I'm Desmond Tutu, mixed with the Zeus of the Zulus. I'm the leader of the new school. Man, I swear I'm starting to feel like Mandela. Nelson. I'm with my troops in the field like Nelson. All these niggas wanna kill Nelson. Y'all gon' make me do 20 years like Nelson. Man, I'm starting to feel like Nelson Mandela. 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 Side high. Nelson Mandela. Yeah, Nelson Mandela. Get to know your ancestors. Can't tell me they ain't jealous of a 7-gram seller. It was something about Mary, nigga. I was Ben Stella. Now the fans mail us all the way from Manchester. Can't tell her shit if you ain't never spent time trying to sell a nigga just to get the car with the trunk in the front. Shout it, that's an elephant. Intelligent nigga with hella sense. Feel with such eloquence ever since I've been on a regiment. Niggas been upset with Prince, but let them vent while I start a revolution. Seem like when you work hard, you never get your retribution. Niggas sending threats, but I keep something with me. Sound like doo-doo-doo-doo when I'm shooting. The same one that was singing Huey Newton. Prince to a king, you don't see the evolution. 20 years in the pen, man, that's really execution. So I encourage each and every student to stay in school, playing cool, obey the rules, or pay your dues, make a move, take a tool, or write some raps, make a mix, take a clue, and you could be dope as me, every food boy, trying to get 40 acres in the mule boy.
Yo, shout out to my boy Saha the Prince for the track. Shout out to Sean P for the illustration, everything. Shout out to Kofi Piche Research Team. You know, shout out to everybody, man, doing this African scholarship, man, in its correct, unbiased manner. And let's get right into it, brothers. Brothers and sisters, let's get right into it. All right, let me make sure that it's broadcasting correctly, everything like that. I hope everybody can see my screen. Yup. Oh, you said Sutek is responsible for that. Well, shout out to Sutek for sure. All right, man. Inside the National Gambian Museum, part trois, or trying to think of what it is in Yoruba. I think it'd be Meta or Efa. I can't remember. We're gonna go right into the early trade networks. So you see right here is 700 AD to 1400 AD. So as you can see, we're looking at copper and brass bracelets, and then bronze, what they call leg rings. If you look in the Ekpe tradition, which is a tradition between people from Cameroon and Nigeria, it's a tradition of the leopard. They use these as a currency, but this is an artifact here in Gambia, copper and brass bracelets. But remember, we're talking about the early trade. So this could have came from another portion of Africa. This could have came from Europeans. Let's go forward. So this was written right by the copper bracelets. It says the treasures of Sare Tiofi. The items in this case are from the hidden Sare Tiofi near the Podor Airport. In 1958, a tractor trailer was working on the embankment at the edge of this mitten. The objects were uncovered, were in jars containing necklaces, bracelets, bells, leg rings made of copper, brass, bronze, plus stone and glass beads. That sounds like a shrine to me. Could be, but who knows? Treasure hunters snatched up most of the objects, to including a gold headdress, which was divided into pieces. However, a local trader and interested officials managed to recover a few items. Most were given to the Ifan in Dakar, which is in Senegal, from where this display was borrowed. These items were not grave goods, so we've established that they're not grave goods. They are valuable possessions of a person who buried them for safety in the town's rubbish dump where no one would think for looking for them. That's interesting. Something happened to the owner, and he or she never retrieved the items, neither did any thieves. Bakri reported the median of exchange between Taruk and its neighbor, Sila, was brass rings, salt, and cloth strips. Very interesting, right? So now we're going to talk about what's called alomb. So remember, they said they were buried in these rubbish heaps. This is a type of it. It's also kind of like an earth mound. So we're talking about the loam. And that word that I can't stand, animist, but we know when we talk about animist, we're talking about African spiritual traditions. So animists are of Western Senegal built small earth mound tombs called loams to bury their deceased rulers. So the tradition of the Sera people is called Afaroug, and rather than put Afaroug, they put animus. Although the Sahur may have borrowed the idea from the Imbarnar builders, they clearly distinguish between their own small loom and the larger mounds, which they say were made by the Sose people. These Sahur tombs are found only in Western Senegal, so you won't find these amongst the Sahur in Gambia, only in Western Senegal. Nolong has been located in Deser's ancient homeland of Futa Toro. So this suggests that it may have been influenced by other Africans, as they alluded to earlier in the passage. Now look at this. It's got sort of a staff-looking figure off to the left of our screen. Maybe that denotes royalty, but this is where they buried their ancient rulers. Let's move on. We're looking at type of water cooler, water pots, stove pots. Yes, they had stove pots back in the day. So when you go in Target and Walmart and you see this bowl with the holes in it, know that that was in ancient Africa back in the day. Yes, they had toilet paper back in the day. You're not seeing things. That is toilet paper. Uh, they're talking about the importance of cotton above the toilet paper when they said cotton was important as a trade item, as a means of exchange as early as 500 BC between North Africa and the Sahel. Oh my goodness. So we are saying that even in 500 BC, there was a trade between North Africa and Sahel. The people that call us Egyptomaniacs is going to be upset at that. Most Senegambian persons would have grown their own supply of cotton and woven it into cloth. Their indigo dyed cloth sold especially well throughout the Western Sudan. Interesting, right? We do know Sudan is right by Egypt, right? Just observation. Gold mining in what's called the Bambouk area as early as the 4th and 5th centuries in BC. Carthaginian ships. We do know where Carthaginian or Carthage is, right? We know where that is. Just saying. They sailed down the west coast of Africa, exchanging pottery for gold, ivory, and hides. Gold mining was a dry season activity, which people worked at when the harvest was in, and other seasonal chores such as well digging and compound maintenance were done. Miners worked in teams of 1 or 2 men and 3 or 4 women. So the women was out there mining as well. The men dug up the ore while the women carried it away and extracted the gold. The team shared the proceeds, giving half going to the men, half going to the women. Equal opportunity for equal work. Local and regional trade. Commodities exchanged locally throughout the Senegambia were mainly foodstuffs, iron, cloth, and slaves. Sea and salt, dried fish, oysters from the Atlantic coast were transported as far east as Upper Gambia and Upper Senegal rivers. Thousands of tons of grain, butter, shea butter, while fat from the tropical African shade tree, milk, honey, and other food items changed hands annually between the nomadic pastoralists in the north and the centenary farmers further south. Iron mine in the interior of the West Africa was transported to every part of the Senegambia. So we know how big metallurgy was and how it shaped and changed the whole landscape of Africa. Cloth made from locally grown cotton was a means of currency and essential item of trade. So we're looking at 700 to 1400 AD. So this suggests that slaves were traded between African nations before the arrival of Europeans. Although we know slavery looked different in Africa, it was on a local level. Uh, it did happen. Prisoners of war, enslaved African, whatever y'all want to call it, it did exist. Although it was not chattel slavery, but it did exist. Beeswax, that stuff y'all put in y'all dreads. Absolutely. The Gambia was early producer of beeswax. It was used for making candles and in leather work. Incense, that stuff y'all burn in your house. This is an example of a bark and sap of a very fragrant tree known as the chure, which is a Wolof word, and santango, which is Mandinka, and chewe, which is Fulbe. Oh, here we go. Trans-Saharan long distance trade. Now, notice I did not say transatlantic. I said trans-Saharan. Y'all gonna stop acting like this Arab slave trade ain't happened. Y'all gonna stop viewing the viewing the Saharan desert as a sea and its important trading centuries of Timbuktu, Agades, Bilma, and other as ports serving in the southern regions. It is easy to see how goods flowed to and from the Senegambia as a part of this trade network. Saharan trade began with the vital exchange of mineral salts or foodstuffs, and other staples were traded, such as cereals. I think that says tin, silver, and zinc. Gold from the Bambouk region was in great demand. Ivory, wild animal skins, and horns, aromatics, ebony, and waxes. Morocco leather, colorful leather work made in the Sudan area were very popular in Europe. That's crazy, right? Ostrich plumes and slaves were some of the exports heading for markets in North Africa and beyond. Y'all heard what I said. In exchange came imports from copper and brass bars, bracelets, manillas, glass heads, trinkets, silver coins, paper, cowrie shells, Tunisian caps. I wonder what those caps looked like. European cloth, horses from the Sahara and Arabia, and Middle Eastern perfumes and spices. Those horses are instrumental in wars in West Africa in different times. I have a presentation on this channel about the Ara War. You'll find more about the horses' impact in that presentation. The forests of the northern Sierra Leone and Volta River area provided Malagua pepper, cola nuts, and later a very essential fruit for the ceremonial lives of ethnic groups in West Africa. Yes, it is. I got a few cola nuts right behind me. Put one up on the screen. So they're saying that cola nuts were involved in this trade. The forests of northern Sierra Leone and the Volta area provided the earlier cola nuts. Very interesting. Yes, this is an essential item if you engage in West African spirituality. The introduction of railways and new commodities diminished the extensive cross-country trade. The latest caravans traveled to the Wadai Benghazi route, discontinuing in 1933. My thing is in the way. Let's see if I can see it on the screen here. Okay, so I can read the rest of it. It says the early trans-Saharan trade left its salt and foodstuffs caravans up to 2 camlets still trek to the trade centers of Timbuktu, and I'm not familiar with that word, but it's in the south central Algeria. Interesting. Pottery. Anybody that studies any type of archaeology knows how important pottery is. In the Senegambia, ceramic work was done by the women, especially the wives of blacksmiths. The origins of the potter's art are obscure, but throughout West Africa, archaeological evidence generally shows the adoption of techniques for manufacture of pottery by around 4500 BC. Some of the best examples of craftsmanship that have survived is that of the Nok culture. We know the Nok are the Proto-Yoruba, in deep time Yoruba, according to Akinwumi Ogundiran, in Nigeria. The Sao of the Lake Chad area, The Sarahule, the Jola people, which I am very familiar with their spiritual system called Asawena, the Bandinka groups in Gambia. So this went all over the West African landscape. The differences in techniques and style are probably due as much to different styles of clay as to variation in cultural patterns. Although pottery made throughout the Gambia, certain villages specialize in ceramic production and manufacture a particular type of vessels. These include Saruli techniques of Sotuma, Sire, Ahunhare, Yurd, and Mandinka patterns in Kiang West District of Jola vessels, Mandinare WD. The pottery is used for many purposes: cooking, food, water, storage, serving food, water carrying, bathing. Other vessels are used as colanders, incense burners, or for religious and spiritual purposes. Animal skins. Animal hides of all kinds were in great demand and exported from the Senegambia. Iguana, leopard, and even python. Let's see what them look like. Bang. We know this can be denote royalty, symbolism of great power and authority. So yeah, they were highly in demand, and as I said earlier, they were even in demand in Europe. Oh boy. Yeah, well, anybody knows me, they know my disdain for monotheism as a whole, but particularly Islam. But you can't talk about West Africa without talking about Islam. And this is the coming of Islam. We're talking about 1000 AD. All right. As you can see, they have started writing in Arabic. The 5 pillars of Islam are written there. The affirmation of faith, prayer, almsgiving, fasting, pilgrimage. We have the Holy Quran to the right there. The book constitutes the heart of Islamic belief in practice. What you're looking at is a grand mosque in Timbuktu in Mali. Drawing of it by Rene Kali in is that 1827? No, that's 1027. It's a Muslim prayer house. Below it says waiting. With the coming of Islam, writing was introduced to Senegambia. Children learned the Arabic alphabet, how to recite the Quran. The basic level of literacy among the people of the Islamic world during the Middle Age was probably higher than that in the Christian areas. Much of the influence of early Muslim scholars can be attributed to their possession of writing. Indeed, the achievement of literacy is a part of the process in conversion to Islam. And traditional animists believe, there's that word again, words have power of their own. How much more powerful than is the written word, which could almost be viewed as magical? One can copy the word of Allah to a light and lamp for those generations not yet to be born. Words can move people throughout the world by force and ideas. What does it say? The Yurterier, I don't know what that word means, can leave traces of his presence after death. The power of words can control and direct supernatural forces and keep records of every aspect of life, from finance to history to literature. So even though this is Islam coming into Africa, you see the syncretism and the traditional mixing with what they call animism in how they described what they're doing with these scriptures, because traditional Islam, they don't do that. They don't do that. They are treating the words of Allah kind of like talisman, kind of like charms. So you can start to see the two cultures merge at this point. And these are I know they look like stuff you've seen from the 10 Commandments. It's kind of the same concept. You're just writing the word of Allah on these wooden carvings. Uh, People put them in their homes for like protection and stuff like that. And that's another view of the Grand Mosque in Mali that we saw earlier. This is a drawing of two Islamic worshippers during this period. As you can see, they're starting to wear the garbs, they're starting to cover their heads, and they're writing about the Quran and lessons from it at this point. Sarah man and woman. So this is what we were just looking at right there. You know, according to Senegambia tradition, the people from Mali received Islam faith from the Serahuli. The Ghani Empire was Serahuli or Sonike, which is a long distance traders. Many were Muslim. They moved throughout or through every part of the empire, while the Almoravid conquest during the early 1100s adapted impetus to Islamization through the Western Sudan, and the Serahuli Muslim traders. Scholars must be given full credit for their role in continual peaceful diffusion of Islam before and after the Almoravids. So they do note conquest, bringing Islam in from the Almoravids, but they also denote that these people, the Sonike, were not on that type of time. Oh, thank God we got out of there. Oh, now we go into migrations. Oh yeah, take a good look at these pictures. Take a good look at these pictures because we gonna talk about this. Take a look at the swords, the staffs, the style of headdress that the woman is holding, the style of hat to the right. That is a full bay woman. Senegambians consider the full bay women to be some of the most beautiful women in Africa. Do you agree? She look like she could be a bad sister now. I need to see the full frontal, but she looked like she can be a bad sister. The sword and spear that we saw is this distinctive shape of a spearhead is a typical of the full bay. All these swords and sheaths are made and decorated in full bay style, but were also so admired by other peoples that they also bought and used them. So this type of sword and spear went through Senegambia. In the early full bay and Sahar lived in small groups, which were vulnerable to attack by raiders. And by what they mean by raiders is slave raiders. And by the slave raiders, they mean the Islamic slave raiders. I want to be very clear in that. They were peaceful people, but fought back in defense when necessary. When the Fulbe and the Sahel organized into large political units, as in states of Futa Toro, Sini, Saloum, they became more aggressive and warlike. So just like Dahomey became warlike because they were preyed upon by slave raiders, the same thing happened to the Sahel and Fulbe, creating larger kingdoms to become a more warlike society. That's what happens. You get beat up, you get your people taken, and your family separated. Somebody says, "Not no damn more. We gonna mount up and give somebody the business." The Fulbe villages are usually small. The houses were laid out in a double row and they face each other across in a broad central street. This present day village differs very little in layout from the early villages. Let's look. Oh, I think I have the pictures at the end. I think maybe not. The cattle herd, the entire Fulbe social and economic system was based on the ownership and exchange of cattle, similar to how the Zulus do it in Southern Africa. They seldom sold their cows except for in emergencies and rarely slaughtered them for meat. They regard the cattle as a source of wealth, which was not to be squandered by killing them. Interesting. The Fulbe lived from milk and millet and items they brought from farming communities in exchange for surplus of milk. Sorry to tell y'all, but West African people in small increments did consume milk. The farmers also benefited from the cattle manure, which helped to fertilize the soil. The Fulbe traded cattle amongst themselves to strengthen their family and other social relations during the ceremonies like marriage. So you about to marry that fine sister, hey man, you got to come up off some cattle. It's just how it was. Amulets, protective amulets, whether Muslim or animist, is that word again, were commonly worn by ethnic groups in Senegambia. This continues to this day, in which all types of amulets, talismans, charms, and things are made from a variety of sources. Like it says, whether it be Muslim or traditional African spiritual, they still do this. Even in like practical things. So like if you'll see like a taxi will have a horsetail fan on the end. If you know anything about horsetail fans in Africa, is used to dispel, negativity. So they attach these to these taxis. Even today, attach these to these taxis. That sounds like a bar, right? And that's a good look at the talisman. This looks like it'll be worn around like the arm or maybe even the waist, depending on the size. Oh, now we're going to talk about my folks, my people. Sahur migrations. Yes, I'm an Njai by birth, so I am a Sahur. The oral tradition of the Sahur tell of their migration from southern Mauritania in the valley of Senegal, the wars, the raids, the uncertainty that followed the breakup of the Ghana Empire in the 11th century, and the subsequent pressure exerted by the Berber tribes, Muslims, on the settled Black populations of the Sahel set off a series of migrations. An additional factor in forcing people southwards was serious droughts in the region. So listen to all the different ethnic groups that I just named, the Mauritanians, the Ghanaians. All of these people start migrating down into Senegambia to create a new ethnic group, which we call Sahur. While the Serahuli, remember those Senike people, of Ghana began their movement south, the Sahur spread across the Senegal River to Futa Toro and moved gradually through the Wolof state of Jolof into Baos, Sini, and Saloum, where they now live. And that is where the Sahur Empire and the Jolof Empire rose from, those areas, Sini, Saloum. So think about it. You already have the Wolof there, and now you have the Sahur people coming, and now you're creating like a super meta ethnic group, along with the Ghanaian people. Interesting. Now we got to talk about the Fulbe. The Fulbe, the origin of these people is not known for sure, but they may be descendants of the Berber cattle herding pastoralists from the Saharan late Stone Age. Their ancestors, along with those of the Sahur, the Wolof, the Tukulor, occupied the southern regions of Mauritania, but moved into the Futa Toro region of Mauritania, but moved into the Futa region of formerly known as Takur, where they mixed with the indigenous population and adopted the local language. The Fulbe, the Sahur, the Wolof languages all belong to the same linguistic family. The Tukulor, the people of Tarur, and the Futa Toro are a subgroup of the Fulbe who resulted from this mix of people. So we're all related. Mauritanians, Ghanaians, Wolof, Sir, we're all related. Fulbe, we share a common ancestor, so to speak. Look at the date from the 1000 to 1800 AD. So we're going from trans-Saharan slave trade full into transatlantic slave trade, and these people are still migrating, still mixing with each other, and then they are being taken forcibly into a slave trade where they're mixing again. So you wonder why you get your DNA test and it's got all these different African ethnic groups in them. We all related. We all cousins. The Fulbe began to migrate east and south in the thousands in search of fresh water and grass for their cattle. They gradually spread eastward across the Sahel during the 11th to 19th century, reaching far beyond Lake Chad. They moved south into the Futa, Jalon highlands and the Cameroon highlands and other areas where their herds could survive. So now we in Chad and Cameroon. Now we in Central Africa. So the idea of Pan-Africanism isn't just something people, kind of pulled out their ass. We all do share a history. We all share common ancestors. We all share migration patterns and culture. The super African highway of wisdom, as Asari Motep coined it, is because of these migrations. They did not go into the forest areas because of the forest dwelling tsetse fly. You don't want none of that smoke. They carried sleeping sickness and a disease that was deadly to the cattle. Also can be deadly to humans. So yeah, you didn't want to go in that forest too far into the forest areas. Animus amulus, there's that word again. Most of the migrating Sahara Fulbe and Mandinging people were animists. Only the Jola and a few other Marabout's holy men were Muslim. And I am here to say that the Jola also had their animist traditions. Both animists and Muslims made and wore protective amulets. Animist amulets were usually made of one or more natural substance empowered by a spoken word, generally a formula. That is 100% true even to this day. Muslim amulets were based on the written word, such as a verse of a Quran, which was wrapped in leather or metal. So you can see the difference in mentality. We have what we call in Yoruba ofo, which are words that we chant into, like natural substances like herbs, and wash the amulets to fortify or consecrate a certain talisman or amulet. For the Muslims, the word of God was all that they needed. They just print a Quran verse on something, and that was it. The Mali Manding Empire. Now we're talking about the Great Mali Empire. It's a symbol of political and social cultural greatness of Mandi-speaking people of Manding, Bambara, Jujulu, and other languages. Mali succeeded the Ghana Empire. They reached its peak of splendor around the 14th century. After stability, Ghana weakened by the Almoravid invasions, Muslims, and other southern Mandi groups rose to prominence, while the Seruli, which are Sonike, founders of Ghana, left their native Wagadu, which was once a name for Ghana, which denotes warrior. They mixed with populations amongst the banks of the Niger River. The Soso, a group of Malinke who were not Muslim. The Malinke from southern Manding asserted their independence. The Soso supremacy only lasted from 1180 to 1230. The Mali formed after Sundiata Keita and his generals defeated the Emperor of Soso, Sumaguru Kante, a battle of Kirina in 1235. The Mali expanded its control over western Sahel and Savannah between the Atlantic coast and the northwest border of Nigeria. The key to Mali's economic power was in control of the trade passing between the forests of Guinea and the Sahel, leading to North Africa and the Mediterranean. Let's read the rest of this. Sorry. It says, if I can enlarge this on my screen. It also had a control of particular gold reefs, which later has shifted east into banks of the Bambouk to Bobore. The capital of Mali was Niani. Its cultural center was Kangaba. While Sundiata adhered to traditional African polytheism, that's another word like animism, his nephew, Mansa Musa, who reigned from 1307 to 1337, was definitely a Muslim, best known for the Malian emperors because of his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324-25 and a visit to Cairo. It is this visit. Oh, well, I'm going to say this at the end. He took so much gold, he spent so lavishly, he disrupted the gold standard throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, but his political achievement was to consolidate Mali's position in the Islamic world where it reached its height and power. Mali declined rapidly after his northern provinces were taken back by the Berbers and the Tuaregs, and its eastern lands were overwhelmed by the riverine kingdom of the Songhai in the late 1400s. The final disintegration of Mali came at the end of the 1500s, although the rulers maintained some political power through their Manding lands for a long time afterwards. But according to the popular phrase of the Manding speaking people of the Western savannah, it states Mali is eternal. Okay, so this Mansa Musa pilgrimage through Mecca, to Mecca through Cairo, I believe that is what put a lot of people of the European persuasion on the map of our natural resources. And we know what happened when the Europeans found out about our natural resources. You should have stayed with your culture, brother. There's a very great write-up about this, I believe, in Spears of the Masi, Volume 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Sean. Because I believe it's Brother Sean that wrote on this topic. Actually, I know it's him. Now that I think about it. Kang Mansa Musa. He has a great article, and I believe it's in Volume 3. Let's take a look at the cloths of this area. This is the Manding people. This is how they dress. This is what they wore. You see the tools. Their migration from their homeland in Upper Niger River near the border of present-day Mali and Guinea, the Mande-speaking people throughout the western half of this Western Sudan. The present populations of Daula, which is the Malinke reference to those Mandinka involved in the trade, in the Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and Ghana, Bambara, Mali, Mindi, the Vai, and others in Sierra Leone and Liberia are the results of these migrations. Look how many ethnic groups I just named, man. We all cousins. We all family. The strong Mandinka presence in the Senegambia and Guinea-Bissau is also due to the spread of Mandi speakers in Upper Niger. In oral traditions, the westward movement of the Mandinka began in the reign of Sundiata Keita. One of his generals, Tiramagan Traore, waged war in Senegambia, conquering the Kanamansans and highlands of Kabu in the western government state of the Mali Empire. Bet you didn't know that. These westward Mandinka brought along their coherent culture from the Manding and mixed it with the local population. The Manding culture and language began to predominate. Today, the Mandinka form the largest ethnic group in the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau and make up a substantial minority in Senegal. So that's how that happened. A lot of us are Mandinka. A lot of us are Malinke. Jollof Empire. You see what's going on here. You might not recognize all of those places, but let's just say all of them became Sahur places and kingdoms at one point. The Baul, Futa Toro, which you've heard me talk about, the Saloon, the Sine. Load this up. During the 1400s, the two major kingdoms were influential in the western Senegambia and Mali, and the south of the Jollof in the north. That's really all I have to say. And the Jollof Empire produced Jollof rice. All you other people out there talking about y'all do Jollof rice better than the Jollof people, y'all need to stop. You see what it's talking about here. Pressure from the Saharan Berbers pushed the population southwards towards the Senegal River, which may have led to the differentiation between the Wolof, the Sahur, and the Tukolor people. So let's think about this. The Berbers caused us to separate. We're all the same people. Wolof, Sahur, Tukolor. Wolof speak Wolof, Serb speak Safi. That's what caused it. By the 1300s, the Wolof had developed their state of Jola, found by. I'm going to tell you how to say this name because it's usually not spelled that way traditionally. It's called Injanjan Injai of Wallo. Yes, the founder of this great empire I share a name with. As Mali declined, as its state of Takur broke up into kingdoms governed by the Wolof and the Binianke, Jolof expanded under the powerful ruler Biram Ndime Kumba Injai. That's another one of my cousins. Jolof itself ruled over the other Wolof state of Wallo, Kayor, Bao, the Sur states of Sine and Saloum, a part of Futarora by the 1400s. From the capital of Tieng, the Wolof held power over the resident populations of Futa, Sarur, and Mandinka. So you see it's flip-flopping back and forth. It's just the history of the region. Jolof's commercial interests were mainly towards the Sahara Central Savannah and probably monopolized much of the north-south trade, the Portuguese, the Mali, the Kabu, the Mandinka, the states of Lower Gambian River, the Yumbe, Badimbu, Niani, and the Wuli. But when increased European presence on the coast causes a shift in focus of the trade towards the ocean, Jolof's influence over these states diminished. That's what you do when you destabilize a people. The ruler of Kayor started to exploit this commercial shift and increase his own military strength. As a direct consequence of this action was the dismantlement of the areas dominated by the Jolof. By the 15th century, the Wallo, the Kayer, the Bao, the Sini, the Saloum were autonomous, that the European dealt directly with them instead of going through the King Jolof. So they cut their side deals. They remained individual kingdoms till the establishment of the French colonial rule by the 1880s. Yeah, that's what happened. Did I say 1880s? I can't really tell. It's fuzzy on my screen. This is a person of that region during this time period. Notice the sword, notice the spear, notice the amulets the person is wearing, notice the dress. This is a Jop, or what y'all say, Diop. This is one of his ancestors. This is a military leader during this time. Notice the horses. Remember, we said where the horses came from. Notice the talismans he's wearing around his neck. Notice the dress of the horse. So these garments were common during this period. These are I believe these are types of talisman. I can't really be sure. You probably can't guess that these are swords. I know, right? Iron swords. Must have been really heavy to swing. They kind of look like staffs, opa osuns in Yoruba tradition, but these are actually swords. These are another type of sword. As you can see, a rifle has come into play. Modern day Inyancho, which is a war dress. The descendant of the Inyanchos is dressed in war clothes handed down to him by his ancestors. Pachana was one of the oldest kingdoms in Kabu. Inyancho clan were the ruling families from which many Gambians can trace their lineage. So like I said, we're a war people. These are political parties that rose in the Gambia in the 1951. You see, we're starting to embrace democracy. Founding fathers of independence. You will see a couple of people on here with my name: the Honorable P.S. Njai, the Honorable A.B. Njai. You will also see, where's my band at? There he is, Honorable S.S. Cisse. Some of y'all have seen this Cisse word or Cisse name spelled as Cessay. That is the modern version. You'll meet some people in America with that Cisse name. That's where it comes from. Genealogy of the royal family of Sini, according to Lat Gran Injai. That's another way of spelling my name, Injai, of Jakho Sine. This talks about the importance of genealogy, which I'm sure we all know, but they're talking about the king's list. They're talking about the weakness and the limits of the genealogy, but this is the best they could do in like creating this genealogical chart that you're about to see. And they incorporated, traditional history, oral history, and things like that. I know it's not that great to see, but as you can see, it splinters off into so many different ethnic groups and names. But I wanted to show, I wanted to show how it looks. Jelawa. All the warrior classes of Senegambian kingdoms, Wolof, Ser, Fula, Mandinka, were famous for their horsemanship and well-trained horses. Remember, I said the horses came from the it's kind of two sources. They usually come from the Arabs in our dealings with the Arabs, and then over time, the Masi were known for the horses, and so were the Songhai. So this is a brother on a horse. So he has to be a warrior in this time period. Notice the turban. Speaking of the turban, indigo black cloth was a favorite dress amongst traditional Sahara and Mandinka warriors. That occurred over time as these tribes became more Muslim. They wore them either as turbans or sashes wrapped around the waist. Muslim elders wore them draped over the shoulder like a shawl. Kingdom of Bundu. Bundu was situated in southeast of Futarora, west of the bank of the Faleme River. It was founded by Tukolor Merabout Malik Dudasi in the 1960s and ruled by his descendants from the capital of Si, Bulebani, to the late 1900s. So this was a kingdom that rose late in history, so to speak, but they were, I guess, what you call animists or polytheists. But they did not straight reject Islam either. So they were kind of like a hybrid kingdom. This is the kingdoms of Sini and Sulum. We've been talking about them and their connection to the Sahar people. I just wanted to show this map. And this is a young Sahar warrior with some of his future ornaments, as it says. He was born into this warrior class. So that's why he has his gun and his amulets, and he will grow up to be a great warrior. This is another sword that they have in the sheath. I love their sheaths. This is a drawing of a warrior of the Diniaki dynasty in Futatoro. It says he has Manding and Fulbe roots. So over time, they start to mix. Just wanted to show this drawing. A lot of people have seen this person and don't know who he is. So I wanted to put this person in here. Amadou Bamba Bake. Amadou Bamba was the founder of the Mouride Brotherhood. He was born in Baoul, which is in northern Senegal, to a Wolof family with Tukulor origins. His father was a noted marabout and had taught Maba's children before following Lat Dior back to Cayor following Mamba's death. Amadou Bamba completed his studies in Mauritania, then returned to establish the religious center in Touba. Though he was not openly hostile to the French, they were suspicious of his large following and deported him twice before finally allowing him to return. Even then, they forced him to stay under the eyes of Dorabel, the administrative center, rather than living in Touba. He was a charismatic leader and teacher. Amadou Bamba very early gained a large following from among former animist farmers and warriors of Baoul, Cayor, and Saloum. Amadou Bamba was very instrumental in the creation of what am I trying to say? Bifal. This is a Muslim brotherhood. This Muslim brotherhood was quite different, though. They were Sufis, and they fought imperialism. Right? So what you start to see here is Muslim brotherhoods not behaving like typical Muslims. They're mixing it with African traditional spirituality, and they're fighting imperialism and colonialism. Man, the Soninke Marabout Wars. Yeah, it went down. But that's going to have to be for another time. That is going to have to be for another time. So I hope y'all learned something. Y'all enjoyed that. Appreciate everybody for pulling up. There will be a part 4. There will be a part 4. Part 4 will probably be the last part. I think that's going to be the end of the museum, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the rich history of Senegambia, usually not taught, usually not spoken about in detail. So this is why I want to continue to give y'all this portion of history. Man, we only took an hour. So yeah, man. Like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Are there any questions, any comments? Look at the chat. Yep, we all fam. You remember when Tupac pulled up in Poetic Justice? He's like, cousin. We all cousins, man. We all related. We all related, man. Uncle Leroy. Uncle Leroy in the building. What's happening, man? Uncle Leroy has a hoodoo group on Facebook. Shares a lot of information in this hoodoo group. If you're into hoodoo or any African spiritual phenomenon, join the group. Uncle Leroy's hoodoo group. Pull up. Pull up. We appreciate all y'all for supporting the channel, man, as we fight for the African minds of our people from the foolishness that's out there. And it's a lot of foolishness. A lot of foolishness. But we will remain, we will continue, we will persevere, we will continue to give y'all this work, man. Because that's what we do at the Master Warrior Clan. So, before I get out of here, I don't see no questions. So, before I get out of here, I want to play my sister, one of the baddest MCs in the game. Y'all might know her. Y'all might not. But I always end with her. I'm always in with her message, because it's vital to our survival as African people. So check this out.
I treat these rappers like they're animals, you see. I'm on a hunt, that's why I'm rocking this meat, nigga. But too many of us are lazy. And too many of us are comfortable. And too many of us have accepted pain as the predominant feature in our lives. And what that means is that we have become comfortable with the ills that are happening to our children. We expect them to die young. We expect their friends to die young. We expect their cousins to die young. And we're upset about it, but not upset enough to bring about a radical change.
Odabo.